good afternoon to all and everyone, especially to you, ma'am. Good afternoon. In this discussion, I will be discussing the wildlife habitat relationship. Let's start. What is a wildlife? What is wildlife? Wildlife refers to all non-domesticated living organism, including animal, plants, fungi, and microorganisms that exist in natural habitats. Wildlife refers to all living organisms that are not domesticated by humans and live naturally in the environment. This includes animal, plant, fungi, and microorganisms that survive and grow without a control. Wildlife can live in different ecosystems such as forests, oceans, grasslands, mountains, and even areas near cities. These organisms interact with each other and with their environment to maintain ecological balance. So one of example of this is a Philippine eagle. A Philippine eagle is a wild bird that lives in the Philippine forest and is not domesticated by humans. And now let's proceed to what is wildlife habitat. So wildlife habitat is the natural environment comprising food, water, cover, and space. Habitat also allow animals to hide from predators and reproduce. If any of these requirements are missing, the species may not survive in that area, and also it provides all the essential requirements for a specific species to survive, hide from predators, and reproduce. So one of the example of this is the forest of Sierra Madre serve as a habitat for the Philippine eagle because they provide tall trees for nesting and prey for food and protection. Let's proceed to a characterization of habitat types. And now let's proceed to a characterization of habitat types. Habitat is the natural environment where an organism lives, grow, and reproduce, and each habitat has a specific physical conditions such as climate, soil, water, and a vegetation that determine the types of plants and animals that can survive there. Habitat types are also classified based on the physical and environmental condition. So these factors determines what kind of animals and plants can survive in that area. Different habitats support a different species because each organism has a specific needs for for a survival. So there are five types of a habitat types. So first is forest habitats. Forest habitats are characterized by dense tree and a moderate to a high rainfall and rich in biodiversity. So forest habitat are characterized by dense tree and also they provide shelter and food for many species. Example of forest habitat is a monkey. Monkeys are good example of animals that can survive in forest habitat because monkeys can climb trees easily, live in the canopy, and find plenty of food in the forest because forests have many fruits, leaves, and insects which monkeys can eat. So the next habitat is a desert habitats. Desert habitats have a very low rainfall, extreme temperature, and sparse vegetation. Organisms that live here are specially adapted to conserve water and can tolerate a heat. So one of these example is in the Sahara Desert. Sahara Desert is the largest desert that can be found in the North Africa that has a 9 million square kilometers. So there is animals that can survive in the Sahara Desert. So one of it is a camel. A thirsty camel can drink up to 30 to 53 gallons of water in as little as 3 to 15 minutes. They can survive for several weeks to 10 months without a drink as they obtain necessary moisture from a desert plant. So this kind of desert plants can also tolerate the heat of the sun. So one of these is a saguaro cactus. Saguaro cactus can absorb up to 200 gallons of water during a single rainstorm. Some specialized species can live without water replenishment for up to 2 years. So the next habitat is a grassland. So the next habitat is the grassland habitat. Grassland habitats are dominated by grasses with few trees, and they experience seasonal rainfall and support grazing animals. A grassland habitat is an area where grasses are the main plants, and there were a very few trees, and this habitat usually has a wide open spaces, moderate rainfall, and plenty of grass that animals can use for food and shelter. Animals that survive in the grasslands are often fast runners or are good at hiding in tall grasses to escape predators. As an example of an animals that can live in a grassland is the carabao, which eats grass and can adapt to open fields. And the second example is the Philippine deer, which can also live in grassy areas where it feeds on plants. And another habitat types is aquatic habitats. Aquatic habitats include fresh water, such as river or lakes, and marine, such as ocean and seas. And these habitats are characterized by a water as the main medium, and organisms are adapted to live in around water. An aquatic habitat is a place where animals and plants live in water, such as oceans, river, lakes, and seas. These habitats provide food, oxygen, and shelter for many organisms that are adapted to live in water. Animals in aquatic habitats usually have gills, fins, or streamlined bodies that can help them swim and breathe underwater. So one of the example of an animals that survives in aquatic habitats are a bangus or a milkfish, which lives in seas and coastal waters, and another one is Philippine crocodile waters, which can live in rivers and freshwater areas. So another habitat is a mountain habitats. Mountain habitats are found at high altitudes and are characterized by cold temperature, strong winds, and low oxygen level. Plants and animals here are adapted to harsh conditions. A mountain habitat is a high elevation area with a cold temperature, strong winds, and rocky terrain. Animals that live in mountains must be able to climb steep rocks, tolerate cold weather, and find limited food. And one of these example is a mountain goat, which survives in the mountain because it has a strong hooves for climbing rocky slopes and thick fur for them to warm. So the next topic is the succession and stand condition. So succession. Ecological succession is the gradual process by which a natural community of plants and animals changes over time. It occurs in stages until a stable community is formed. So there are two main types of a succession. First is primary succession. This primary succession occurs in areas where no life previously existed, such as after a volcanic eruption during the eruption of Taal volcano, especially in 2020, in places where thick volcanic deposits buried the land and destroyed all vegetation. The surface was left barren with little to no life. Since the eruption removed existing plants and in some areas left newly formed or heavily altered ground. So the process of ecological recovery began from a scratch. So the first organism to grow were a pioneer species, such as mosses, grasses, and small herbs that can survive in poor nutrient deficiency soil. Over time, these plants help break down volcanic materials and add organic matter to the soil. So, as the soil improved, shrubs and small trees began to grow, and eventually leading to the gradual restoration of the ecosystem. So, the second type is a secondary succession. Secondary succession, this occurs in areas where a life previously existed but was disturbed by events like fire, floods, or human activities. So the soil remains and so recovery is faster. So it is a process where plants and animals gradually grow back in an area where a disturbance happened but the soil is still present. It occurs after events like a forest fire, floods, and storms, allowing grasses, shrubs, and eventually trees to grow again. For example, after a forest fire, grasses grow first and then small plants and trees return over time. And next is the stand condition. So stand condition refers to the current state and structure of a forest, that a group of trees growing together in a particular area. It describes the age, density, health, and spaces composition of the trees. So there are three stand condition are commonly classified as a first is a young stand. So young stand is this stage has a newly growing trees that develop after a disturbance, such as a fire or logging or storm. The trees are still small and continue to grow quickly as they compete for sunlight, water, and nutrients. The second is mature stand. In this stage, the trees are and uh, fully grown strong, and they produce seeds and fruits, allowing new plants to grow, and the forest is stable and supports many animals and plants. And the third one is over mature or growth stand. This stage has very old and large trees. Some of trees begin to die and fall, creating space for new plants to grow. So this stage often has a high biodiversity and complex forest. By understanding succession and stand condition, it is important in forestry conservation and wildlife management because they help determine how ecosystem develop and how they should be managed sustainably. So for the next topic is the edge versus interior habitats. Edge habitat or a forest edge is the boundary area where two different ecosystems meet, such as a forest and a grassland, or a forest and a farmland. This area usually has more sunlight, wind, and temperature variation compared to inner part of the forest. So one of the example of a edge habitat is a Puerto Princesa subterranean river. In some areas, the forest meet the beach or the coastal area, creating an edge habitat where animals can use resources from both land and water. Animals like the Philippine long-tailed macaque and the white-bellied sea eagle can survive there because they can find food from the forest and the sea. So the Interior habitat refers to the deeper central part of the forest or the ecosystem that is far from the edge, and it has a more stable environment conditions and less human disturbance. So it is a deep inner part of the forest that is far from the edges, where the environment is more stable, quieter, and less affected by human activity. It usually has a all trees, thicker shade, and higher humidity, making it suitable for animals that need dense forest conditions. Such as an example, in the Philippines can be found the interior forest of Mount Apo is an natural park where animals like the Philippine eagle and the Philippine tarsier live because they depend on deep and undisturbed forest. So the main difference of between edge and interior habitats is environmental stability. Edge habitats experience more, interior habitats are more stable and suitable for species that depend on deep forest condition.
Afternoon, everyone. So this is the continuations, the discussions about wildlife habitats relationships. So let me introduce myself first. My name is Jeric Delphine. So let's start our discussion. So we have first riparian zone, vegetated areas along river streams, ponds, and lake, usually 3 to 50 meters wide, often protected during forest management. So why is riparian zone is important? So riparian zone is important because they protect both water ecosystems and land ecosystems, and they serve as connections between water and forest habitats. So example of this is to protect water quality, reduces flooding, prevents soil erosions, provide wildlife habitat. So a riparian zone is the vegetated area. Vegetated refers to the plants that growing particularly area. So located along rivers, streams, lakes, ponds, and other bodies of water. These areas contain trees, shrubs, grasses, and their plants growing beside the water. So this usually extends about 350 meters from each side of the water but a water body depending on management practices. So example of this is the Agusan River support birds and aquatic species. So Agusan River is one of the largest rivers in the Philippines, located in Mindanao. The vegetations along Agusan's rivers include trees, grasses, and wet plants that prevent soil erosions, protect river banks, filter water, and provide habitats for wildlife. Another example of this is the Philippine riparian support. Birds, amphibians, fish, small mammals, and escorts. So riparian zones supply food, shelter, nesting areas, travel corridors for animals. So next, so this is the example of the riparian zone. Okay, next we have a wildlife corridors. Wildlife corridors are natural pathways that connect separated habitats, allows animals to move safely, maintain genetic diversity, and reduce risks of extinctions. Connect separate habitats means linking two or more natural areas that have been divided so animals can move freely, safely between them. Okay. When forests are cut by by roads, farms, and buildings, the habitat becomes fragmented. So, ibig sabihin, yung fragmented, it means broken into part or divided into small pieces that are not connect properly. So, animals may get trapped in the small areas. Wildlife corridors act like a bridge and or pathways that reconnect their separated habitats. Okay. Why connecting habitats is important? Okay, because it allows animals to find foods and water, helps them find meats, prevent inbreeding, reduce risks of extinction, support migration. So, allow migrations and movement. Allowing migrations movement means giving animals safe pathways to travel between habitats so they can find foods, produce, and survive. So, reduce species isolation. So, ibig sabihin nito, reduce species isolation, stop being isolated, means preventing animals populations from being separated, allowing to interact, reproduce, and maintain healthy and genetic diversity. So, this is the example of wildlife corridors. So let's proceed to the habitat models. So what are habitat models? Habitat models are tools used to predict, evaluate, and measure habitat quality for specific wildlife species. So we have main types of habitat models. So first, habitat suitability index HSI model, species distributions models, populations based models. So let's tackle first the habitat suitability index. So for that, it means to measure how suitable goods or bad habitats. So it's for a specific species, like food. The availability of foods that the forest we have, and waters, shelters, and temperature vegetations. If the species or the animals can survive that particular forest. Okay. Next, species distributions models predict where species is likely to live or to be found. So, the distributions can predict where the species or animals is likely to live. So, example of this is to climate, o yung mga animals or species na nabubuhay doon sa climate. And rainfall is also yung mga species and animals that can live the rainfall. Then evaluations and soil types, yun we can predict the species that species is likely to live or to be found. So number 3, populations based model. So it focuses on the size and the growth. This is the focuses on the size of the forest, or yes, the size of the forest, to growth that the forest have, uh, and of the species populations over time. So example of this is birth rate, weight rate, migrations, and carrying capacity. So kung may growth ba, or may growth ba yung species doon sa population over time, yung marami bang namamatay, marami bang nabubuhay, o mayroon bang new species na distinct, yon. So let's proceed to the direct habitat management. Direct habitat management involves physically altering vegetations or habitat structure to improve conditions for wildlife. Okay, this example of this is the reforestation project in Bukidnon directly improve wildlife habitat by planting native trees and tree species. Okay. Direct habitat management, it means where we physically change. Tayo yung bumabago, or tayo yung nagmanipulate ng habitat to improve conditions for wildlife. It involves actively modifying vegetations, land, or habitat structures. Okay. Why it is important? It is important because it is improved food availability, increases shelter and nesting areas, enhances habitat quality, support wildlife populations growth. Okay. Samples of direct habitat management. We have reforestations, planting trees and cleared areas, controlled burning, removing old vegetations to allow new growth. Thinning forest, removing some trees to reduce overcrowding. So creating food plots, planting crops and wildlife. Wetland restorations, rebuilding damaged wetlands. So direct habitats management is the intentionally physical modifications of the habitat to improve wildlife conditions such as tree planting, controls, burning, and forest thinning. So tayo yung gumagawa tayo yung gumagawa ng pagbabago ng ating habitat for tawagan or to improve the forest that we have. Okay, let's proceed to the indirect habitat management. Indirect habitats management is protecting and improving wildlife habitats by controlling the factors that affect it instead of physically changing the habitat itself. So protections policies in Tuvatha refers natural parts regulate humans' activities to maintain ecosystems balance. So indirect habitats management means protecting wildlife habitats by controlling harmful human activities and environmental factors rather than directly changing the habitats. So ibig sabihin nito, it's controlling harmful from human activities. Sila yung kumokontrol ng mga human activities na example of that is kasi sa direct, it's tayo yung gumagawa sa pagbabago ng habitat. So the indirect naman, ito yung kumokontrol for changing for the human activities for our environment. Sa man siya, huwag kang manistorbo. Okay, they follow the rules, regulations to protecting the wildlife habitats by controlling harmful human activities and environmental factors. Example of this, strict rules limit fishing and tourism activities. So, example of this is Tubana Reef Natural Park. So, these strict rules limit fishing tourist activities. The habitat is protected by regulating human activities. So, they have rules that need to follow para mabawasan yung pagkasira o yung pagkawasak o yung pagkawala ng mga animals species that we have. Okay, what is the difference between indirect and direct management? Okay, the habitat management, we have changed the habitat itself. Tayo yung bumabago sa pagbabago ng ating habitats. While indirect, we control causes of habitat damage. Kita naman yung kumokontrol sa pagbabago. Yun. Okay. So let's proceed to the sample. Okay, we have as example of indirect habitats management. We have hunting regulations, setting limits or burning hunting, logging restrictions, controlling trees, cutting, populations control, preventing waste from entering rivers. Number 4, grazing management, limiting livestock in forest area. Invasive species control, removing harmful, of course, non-native species. Yung kinukuha yung mga harmful na non-native species dito sa Pilipinas. Naintindihan na ba yun? Okay, let's proceed to the threats of wildlife habitats. We have major threats of habitats include overhunting, urbanizations, invasive species. Okay, overhunting animals excessively beyond sustainable limits because it causes of reduces animals populations and can lead to extinctions. Okay, example of this is illegal hunting of endangered species. It cause of reducing biodiversity. Okay, urbanization naman, it is expansion of cities, yung pagpapalawak ng mga cities, buildings, roads, and that can affect habitats or the animals. Habitat destructions and forest fragmentations. Populations increase and wildlife displacement. So, ibig sabihin, yung population ng mga tao, yung population ng mga buildings, yung mga forest na sinila nila dahil pinapatayo nila ng mga buildings, lumalawak na yon. So, the wildlife displacement. nagkawasak-wasak na yung mga lahi ng mga different animals and species, at hindi na nila yon makikita, or nagkawasak-wasak, nagkahiwalay-hiwalay na yung mga species na meron tayo. So kaya nga meron tayong wildlife corridors na kung saan this is way that animals can free to move or migrate. Okay. And invasive species naman, we have examples of invasive species. We have kentwood, kogongras, or konzu. Some non-native species that spread and harm ecosystems. Example, kentwood. It is from Central and South Africa. It came invasive because it produced quickly and it's poisonous to predators. Ang kentwood, yung kentwood kasi it's not hindi dito yung hindi local yung kentwood dito. It is local local from Central and South America. So yung kentwood, ito yung example ng kentwood kasi ito it's a lot of diba dagan kayo sila, so dagan kayo sila pag dali kayo sila madaghan, then dali kayo sila magpadagan silang lahi, and then poisonous sila. So meaning kapag kinain sila ng predators, yung predators na kumain ito mamamatay rin. So paano na yung predators, paano na yon mag-i-extinct yung extension yung life nila, yung kapag kinain nila ito, patay na sila, di ba? Okay, we have next is kogongras. This is the example of kogongras. Kogongras because it spreads aggressively. Diba kita nataani sa mga bukid, grabe kapag sila na yung tumubo. Halos lahat ng ng forest talaga pag kanina sila matubo sa bungtod kay murag halos lukpo na nila tanan. So this is aggressively and dominates land and hard to remove once established. In result, reduces biodiversity. Ayan. Kunzu naman. Ito yung kunzu. Example of the kunzu. Kita ko ani katong nakadtukog grabe. Di na mo makita yung kahoy. Puros na lang dahon mo makita. Kunzu is from East Asia, China, Japan, and it was introduced for erosion kasi daw. Controlled but spread rapidly and smothered other plants. So, grabe yung kapag sila yung tumubo, wala ka na talaga makikitang kahoy dahil sila na lang yung makikita. So, it caused non-cover trees and block sunlight, then kills native plants, of course, and lacks natural predators in new areas. So, a result ani kay destroys the natural vegetations, yung kunzu. Again, this is the example. So, in conclusions, wildlife survival depends on the availability of foods, water, covers, and space provided by healthy habitats. Forest successions, age, and interior conditions and riparian zones all influence which species can survive in an area. However, habitat loss, fragmentations, urbanization, overhunting, and invasive species threaten wildlife populations. Proper direct and indirect habitat management is essential to protect biodiversity and maintain ecologically balance. So that's all. Thank you, everyone.